Hello, guys. I'm Ethan Woodworth. I'm back again on the Stoic Sapling podcast. Today, I brought another guest on the podcast, and it is my buddy from Zionsville High School, Duncan Michie.
Thank you
Welcome,
for having
man.
me, man. I'm psyched to be here.
You are one of the biggest supporters of my podcast, if not the biggest. So I thought it was about time that I hosted you.
Thank you, man. I'm a big fan of the show. I watch every podcast.
Yeah.
Excited.
Which one has been your favorite podcast?
My favorite was definitely the life commandments that you did, where you kind of mixed in your own, but was it Ben Franklin?
Ben Franklin, yes.
I like those a lot.
That was a common answer. I think some people at Jiu-Jitsu have watched my podcast, and they all said that one was their favorite as well. So
yeah, that was good. I felt like I got a lot from that. Like, even if I haven't integrated it into my life, I still thought it was interesting. You know what I mean? Like, the frugal aspects
you
of
integrate some of those.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like nice to be mindful of them. Like, I'm not a frugal person. I'm still very materialistic, but like, it's good to at least think about it. You know
Yeah. I mean? You speak like a frugal man when we have discussions sometimes.
Yeah. You know.
Yeah.
Maybe inauthentically, but whatever.
Yeah. So before we were rolling, you were telling me about your stomach, and you have stomach issues, but you're trying to mediate that by doing some stuff.
Yeah, dude. I've been seeing doctors and stuff. I just got cupping like all up here, like even on my throat, which was like mad uncomfortable. But I did acupuncture too. But this guy I'm seeing is like a Eastern medicine dude. I don't know exactly what you call it, but it's like unconventional stuff. So instead of just giving you pills and shit, they'll try and find like the root spiritually of the issue. And like I thought I was gonna go in there and hum and sing and do stuff, but it wasn't really like that. He was just talking about like the energy of my body and the direction it's moving in, and like keeping that positive. So I was confused by it. This is my first like time doing this.
But does that feel authentic to you? Like, is there something to the madness? Like, from our eyes, like our Western world, does that seem? It seems weird, of course, to all of us. But like, do you think he's onto something with this like Eastern herb type medicine?
I think so for sure, because like, I think in a Western society, there's just less of an emphasis on like the spiritual aspect of stuff. And obviously there's religion and whatnot, but people don't think about like the energy that surrounds them in their bodies and their lives. And whether you think it's made up or not, like it's definitely real that your mindset, whether it's positive or negative, can affect your life and affect your body and your physical state. So I think I don't really fully understand it, but I'm trying to make a push to just like believe in it and see it as authentic, because that's the only way it would make like any difference.
Yeah.
But I think it's worth looking into for sure.
I that's why I was going to say I've looked into it, and I guess that was kind of one of my biggest things I've learned within the past 5 years is that like your mental state and how you are mentally currently affects your actual flow of your body, and it can affect your heart, it can affect your just well-being all around, sleep. And I guess I never really realized that when I was a kid. But just the more I've grown up, the more I've kind of experienced life, I've understood that. And that's why I've resonated with some of the Eastern religions and Eastern philosophies, especially that medicine type stuff, meditation being one of the biggest ones, and some of the Buddhism philosophies that I've talked with your dad. I know he's a big believer in that stuff as well. So
he's big on the meditation. But me and Greenlee, friend of the show, Teddy Greenlee, we're actually talking about this. And just like how breathing specifically can affect your physical body so much. And if you have like a high heart rate, or you're feeling sick or ill or whatever, like simple deep breathing techniques can physically make you feel better and have like a real impact on you, which I think is something that a lot of people aren't even aware of, that they have that power over themselves to control their breathing and just like feel that in the moment. So I thought that was one thing that kind of pushed me towards this, was like, you can change how you feel based on your physical like symptoms.
And I've tried to do this thing called box breathing recently, which is, it's like 2 in, hold at the top for 2 seconds, 2 out, hold at the bottom for 2 seconds. So it's just, you're in this kind of box of just 2 seconds each square part. And I've been trying to do it after pushing the sled with weights on it. And your body naturally doesn't want to inhale through your nose. Nasal breathing, it's a lot tougher than just like, So I've been trying to do the box breathing through my nose, and it's really like slowed down my heart rate a lot quicker, and just got me with my next sled sets a ton quicker. And that's one of the recent kind of breathing techniques I've tried, in addition to Wim Hof, which I've talked about on here a bunch.
The Wim Hof one is really interesting, because like the first time I saw Wim Hof, people were saying it was like a natural high. which of course you're like 14. You're like, wow, what is this? I can breathe and get high. That's awesome. But it's like have you tried it with like a cold shower?
Mm-mm.
That is like an exhilarating. I hate taking cold showers. I just think it's uncomfortable, and I know there's probably benefits, but like
You're doubling up. You're doing the breathing and the cold shower.
you do it in a cold shower, yeah. Which I guess I don't know if it like constricts your blood flow or something, but it's supposed to add to the experience. But it really does. Like you walk away from a session of Wim Hof breathing, and you feel really different. It's interesting.
Have you had the just experience where your actual like your body's tingling, like especially like extremities, like my feet and my hands and my head feel like it's a natural high. It actually is. Like I feel like I'm buzzing and like there's something going on inside me.
Yeah.
And that's where like I'm in that state and I'm so aware of it where I just have to like cool myself down, tell myself that this is normal. Because it's kind of your body freaks out for a little bit. It's like, what's going on with you? Just take a breath of oxygen. That's what you're doing is the breath hold.
Yeah.
And I just have to tell myself like, this is okay. This is okay. You're all right. Like you're not going to die.
Yeah, it feels unnatural, but it's euphoric. Like it feels good, you know? It's just like an unfamiliar feeling. But, you know.
I've been trying to mix the Wim Hof with meditation after. So I'll kind of warm up with the breathing session with Wim Hof and then go towards like meditation. I feel like it's a good bridge because the one kind of puts me at ease leading into meditation. I'm already just like tranquil as shit, just ready to go.
Dialed in.
Yeah.
I like it. Yeah, we've talked about this, but like, I feel like I'm still not at the point where I can really meditate and like get something from it because I'm just too hyperactive. I'm always thinking, but I've just been practicing like mindfulness specifically, which I think you definitely have talked about a lot, but not like a controlled session of meditation, but just throughout the day. Like, it's almost like pinching yourself to see if you're awake, just reminding yourself of your surroundings and staying present in the moment, you know?
We can jump here to some Nietzsche quotes. And
Absolutely.
I don't even know, like, I tried to pick up a Nietzsche book. I've told you about this. It was Beyond Good and Evil.
Beyond Good and Evil, yeah.
It's still in my backpack. I got like 20 pages in, but I have not read it.
Yeah, I actually read Beyond Good and Evil, but I think I maybe comprehended like 15% of what I actually read because it's so wordy and he makes so many like allusions to things that I'm not familiar with, like strange forms of philosophy from the 1600s that I just have never learned about. So everything that he was referencing was just kind of lost with me. But I think the basic ideologies that I pulled from the book were pretty impactful and like stood with me, and that's why I'm so interested in Nietzsche as like a philosopher.
So the 15%, you reaped a lot of benefits from that, even though you didn't understand maybe 85% of it.
Absolutely, yeah. Like all the nuances and whatever he was talking about just went completely over my head. But the baseline kind of messages that I took, or at least how I interpreted them, I don't even know if this is necessarily how he was trying to come across, but I found that powerful.
See, I guess that's the only thing that matters though, right? Like if there's that one hint of takeaway in anything, like I was telling this to a person at jiu-jitsu, I was saying how I kind of fear my message won't be understood by anybody. I'll just sound like an idiot. And his point was like, even if one person that watches your podcast came away with like one thing from it, you won. Like you won. And there's going to be at least one person that comes away with one thing. So help that one person say those things, even if everything doesn't connect with them, even if you don't agree with or don't understand 85% of the things that they're trying to say and trying to bring to you. So,
yeah. And it's all up to interpretation too. Like even if someone gets something meaningful to themselves that you didn't even mean to portray to them in that way, you're still helping someone out and helping them get like a new perspective, I guess.
Yeah.
Which is still important.
Yeah. So that's kind of why we wanted to discuss Nietzsche, is for this reason. So I wrote down 2 quotes here. I don't know if you read these. I think you read.
Skimmed over
them. I'll go with the first one here. It says, actually, I don't know which one I want to go with. We'll go with the first one. In individuals, insanity is rare, but in groups, parties, nations, and epochs, it is the rule. And I haven't even thought about these, really. I wrote like a few sentences, but kind of my first thought is he means here, in groups, you're bound to act differently. You're bound to kind of develop that groupthink and develop the identity of the whole. And I immediately think to kind of my past with my friend group. My mind always goes to middle school. And this is especially prevalent in middle school.
Oh, for sure. I mean, humans are such social creatures that we're bound to come together for better or for worse. And I think, like you said, in middle school, it's like, one kid alone that's a little schemer. Maybe they're going to climb up on top of the press box at the bleachers when they're not supposed to. But you get like 10 kids together, it's so easy for everyone to just form together in unity and do some things that they're not supposed to do. Which, like, to a more cynical way of thinking, like in politics, like this groupthink that you were talking about, like one person with radical ideals is not really that dangerous until they come together with a huge group of people, like the Nazi Party in Germany, right? Like
that's from
Hitler alone wasn't that dangerous, but with armies of people supporting him, it was way worse.
Yeah, and that my mind always goes to like Nazi Germany first, the worst of the worst. But even in just minor cases and just minor misinformation being spread by one person, a lot of people hop on the train more and more. I think that's what you see a lot in media nowadays, and it's chaotic and it's crazy. And Nietzsche was just way before this media time, but his words still speak true to today.
Yeah, and I think to that point, like a lot of older philosophy, like Nietzsche is like late 1800s, right? But even older stuff like Plato and Socrates, it's so interesting because a lot of it still kind of universally applies to how the world works today, even though society is so much different. There's different groups of people with different ideas that didn't even exist 500 plus years ago. There's new technology. And all of these kind of basic principles of life can still kind of ring true to some extent, which makes it so fascinating to kind of hear about these people like Nietzsche, like this quote. We can think about this and instantly connect it to something that we experienced in the last 5 years. Yeah. Even though he said it 200 years ago, not really meaning that at all.
Yeah. This is completely off topic, maybe a little bit close, but what do you think about this Elon Musk Twitter thing? Is this a case of maybe, is he insane? People call him insane? Are people just making out him to be insane?
I don't know. I've always liked Elon Musk just because he's so individual and he doesn't really seem to be swayed by corporations or even money as much as some people might think he is. But I think he's like purely insane. Not in a terrible way, but I think he's nuts. And I think that a lot of like geniuses, like it's like that Kanye song, name one genius that ain't crazy. They're all insane. Like Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, these people that are super geniuses are nuts. Yeah. And they probably lack some sort of emotional control or whatever that other people might have. But he's a smart dude. You got to give it to him. And he's so successful. It's like he's doing something right.
So you think individually he may be one of the few people that really are insane just on a different spectrum, but it's not negating. It's not bad.
I mean, to relate it to the quote, I don't think that he's like one insane driving force. I think he's got a lot of power, a lot of people behind him, which maybe his actions and his insanity or whatever you want to call it wouldn't be possible without that kind of support. But I think that he's just like a creative deviant. He's just different from the rest of society.
Yeah.
But as far as the Twitter thing goes, I think he's got good motives. He's trying to open up free speech, at least if that's like, if what he's saying is true. But we'll have to see, dude.
I was reading the Twitter comments on one of his recent posts. I shouldn't be doing this. I should not be doing this. But there was someone in the comments was saying how he had like, I think it was, he has $40 billion. It was like $40 billion to buy Twitter. And there's the person was saying that there's 8 billion people in the world. They're saying how he has enough money to give every person in the world $5 billion. Because they were just doing 40 divided by 8.
It goes like $5, but $5 billion.
And the scariest part is she had like 2,000 likes on it. But like I was like, no way 2,000 people could like this. It had to have been a troll. Like it had to have been.
That has to be. That's insane. If 2,000 people actually stumbled across that and were like, yeah, that's a good point, then I'm losing faith.
We're doomed.
We're actually doomed. That's what free speech gets you, man. You get a lot of that, but I don't know.
That's what I'm saying. It's like I'm for this free speech stuff, but that's just like blatantly wrong. Like it's because it's math. Like you're just incorrect. And then, so like, should that be filtered out? I mean, probably not, because she's just making herself look like an idiot to most people that are of second grade education. Yeah. But
they don't do. I don't know. In second grade.
Yeah, no. I would say maybe that's a fifth grade.
Just like education. A competent human. But I don't know. That's one thing I saw a lot of people pushing back on with the Twitter thing was like, when you give true freedom of speech, along with it comes misinformation and broad misinformation. Like news outlets or even like independent news companies can do and say whatever they want on Twitter, and they can report on a false story and get 1.5 million likes, and suddenly something that never happened is truth to millions of people. So that's one issue that I saw that people had with it, but I think news companies are doing that anyways.
Yeah,
you know?
I know. I see that completely, especially on Instagram. I mean, like, people advocate free speech, whatever, but some of these pages, they'll say, like, LeBron James broke his ankle, out for season, just to get clicks.
Yeah.
It's like, and people in the comments are like, laugh my ass off, you're capping, bro. You're lying. Why are you even saying this? Or, like, some people think it's funny. I'm like, all they did was lie just to get a bunch of retweets and maybe get their, like, one time of popularity.
It's stupid. I mean, I don't know. This is like a cynical thought, but money is truly like the driving factor for everything. Like the more you look at, like, why would someone post that LeBron broke his ankle? It's just, they want money. They want clicks where you're going to go to their website, you're going to see an ad, and they're going to get a certain amount of money per click, right? Like it's all driven by money and greed. And that's why, like, I hope Elon Musk kind of takes Twitter in the direction of like true free speech, not greedy, money hungry, like clicks and whatnot, but just like a platform for people to discuss things unfiltered, uncensored, just true conversation. I remember, I'm sure you've watched the podcast with him and Joe Rogan.
Oh, classic.
It's interesting to like just hear him sit down and have an authentic conversation and kind of work through how he thinks about things. Because you can tell he's very meticulous and careful about how he speaks and what his plans are and what he reveals.
See, those ones are just tough for me because, and I'm not saying I could do any better, but Joe a lot of times doesn't understand like the space concepts he's talking about, physics concepts. So he can't obviously go deep because he has to filter everything he's saying, especially to all Joe's audience members, and me included. I couldn't understand what he was saying if he went into like all the SpaceX stuff, all the Tesla stuff, maybe like the financial ends. I couldn't keep up with all of that. So you could tell he was kind of dumbing it down for us.
I mean, Elon Musk wants to like tell you the design of his rocket ship and all the crazy parts that go into it, and Joe Rogan's just like, let's watch a video of a moose getting hit by a car. You know, like there's different reasons people watch that podcast for sure. Yeah. I like the stuff where it's like you're watching a moose get hit by a car, just having a goof and a gaff and a laugh and a half. That's like what's interesting.
See, and that's the thing. I was telling people at jiu-jitsu, they were asking me who my next podcast guest was, and I was like, "This is my buddy Duncan." They're like, "Well, who the hell's Duncan?" And I was like, "Duncan is," and I was trying to fill in the blank, and I was like, "He's kind of a hippie, man."
Yeah, that's a good description, I would say.
And then I was like thinking on a second thought, yeah, I think he kind of is, man. He likes Grateful Dead. Does that automatically qualify him as a hippie? You tell me.
I would say I'm a hippie, yeah. I mean, I don't know how I would like define myself shortly, but I definitely fall into that. I like tie-dye, like the Grateful Dead, like music. I don't know, I like being outside.
That's hippie-ish, dude.
Yeah. I'd be part of the counterculture for sure back in the Vietnam days. Like bandana, sunglasses, long hair. I don't know. That's who I like envision myself as.
I envision myself, my ideal self, being part of the hippie wave and just passing that vibe to everybody around me, I hope.
Yeah. I mean, it's got good morals, you know? Peace, love, positivity. Mm-hmm. It doesn't really take you down a bad path. But, you know, there's not really much of like a hippie movement nowadays. Yeah. It's just like a hipster. I go to Seattle and drink $10 coffees and get tattoos. Like, I don't know. That's like where I go.
Oh, dude, that's great.
But, yeah, we'll see. 10 years from now, take a bus to LA, San Francisco, see what happens. Do you want to buy, I don't know what you call it, like a Volkswagen bus, like the Mystery Machine?
Yes. Dude, you're definitely a hippie then. If that's like on your radar.
God, dude, that's like been a big thing of mine. Because have you ever watched That 70s Show?
Mm-mm.
They've got a sick car in that show, like a little van.
Yeah. Is it a sitcom?
It is, yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if you'd like it. I think it's pretty funny. Yeah. But it's obviously just like 70s goofs back to back to back to back. So if you're interested in that time period, it's like...
No, I'm definitely interested in that time period.
Right on.
Sounds right up my alley.
Highly recommend it, dude.
Maybe we can get that hippie culture revived.
Yeah, I gotta start wearing like open-toed shoes. That's one thing. I'm insecure about my toes. I've always got socks on. But like real hippie movement is just let them breathe, you know? Let the dogs bark.
That's what I've been off of the whole senior year. I've been wearing slides to school and letting the dogs bark, as you say.
I bet it's freeing though, dude.
It is freeing. Yeah. And people I think people get like a good laugh out of it because it's not like self-demoralizing or anything, but it just kind of shows like I've stopped giving a shit. I'm allowing you to see my toes. This is a pretty sacred part of my body.
What's sacred about toes?
Guys' toes are sacred, brother.
No, I agree.
100%.
It's just like a vulnerable statement, you know?
It is.
Just letting them out there.
Especially if you have like hairy feet.
Yeah.
I don't have really hairy feet, but like I still have some hair on like my toes. I don't know. I get kind of self-conscious about that. So
yeah, of course. Dude,
I'm letting it loose.
If you're not self-conscious about your feet, you got a weird thing about feet, you know? Like, everyone's got some weird feet, dude. It's okay. But, I don't know.
Second Nietzsche quote here, "The snake which cannot cast its skin has to die, as well as the minds which are prevented from changing their opinions. They cease to be mind."
I think if people refuse to, like, change their minds and opinions, society goes nowhere. Because, you know, imagine people lived forever. Like, the world would be exactly the same as it was 1,000 years ago. Nothing would change because people would grow into this elite position of power and stay the same way they are. And they wouldn't change their minds, and they wouldn't evolve and adapt to new ideas, and things would never change. So, like, I guess, one thing I respect the hell out of is old people that are in touch with, like, new music, new media, whatever you want to call it, you know. Old people on Reddit, just stuff like that, because it shows that they're willing to adapt to like social change and listen to Lil Xan or 6ix9ine or like some weird rapper that the kids are hip to, and they're 80 years old. They like Led Zeppelin. They don't know what this is, but they're giving it a shot. I think that's awesome, dude. And I hope that I can be that kind of person when I'm older to like try and accept new ideas for what they are instead of saying, "Oh, that's wrong. That's different from how I was taught." Because I think it's important for everyone to kind of come around to that at some point in their lives, you know? You can't just stay to your traditions forever.
And I don't desire to be that person either, because I think I know too many people that are in that boat. And not bad people at all. It's just like, I think we can do a lot more here. And it just kind of feels like the growth has just been stunted. But with more of a growth mindset, like Nietzsche's talking about here, anything's possible. And that doesn't mean that I want everybody to be some progressive, let's develop all of these crazy ass ideals because it's different than what we do currently. But I think some of those ideals and some of those forward thinking movements and ideas are obviously what is going to help generations down the line instead of just your current generation or what you currently believe.
Yeah.
Kind of how I see it.
You could tie that into politics too. Like you were saying before, people aren't very willing to change their ideas about, you know, let's say like abortion or gun control, these really polarizing issues, you know. People make up their minds and there's no crossover. And I truly believe that 99% of the time, someone on the left and someone on the right arguing about gun control or abortion or whatever issue it may be is not that productive most of the time because neither party is willing to compromise or change their own opinion.
No, there's no point. Like, that's why I don't even like those arguments, because it's just like, it's the same reiterated bullshit. And it's never going to go anywhere, especially the abortion and gun control one, because I do see, I don't want to get my own opinions on here, but I do see both sides of those. And I always see both sides of them. That's why I never really side with one or the other on specifically those two issues. But it's just like, why do we even talk about this anymore? Because
yeah, it's exhausting.
It's exhausting. It's just like, nowhere. I will never partake in a discussion about either one of those topics. I'll partake, but I'll just say like what I usually say. Just like, you guys both have points. I don't know what the hell I would do if I was to choose between one or the other.
Yeah.
And I don't know. That's kind of my answer. That's my answer for a lot of things, but specifically those two garbage topics that I don't like discussing.
Dude, I think that's a good approach. I wish more people were willing to say, I see both sides. I don't know. Because I think people feel pressured to pick a side. And this goes back to the first quote of like a group mentality. As humans, you want to be part of like a social order. You want to belong to a group of people. So naturally, you're going to want to pick a side. Because there's two camps. You're in or you're out. And I think a lot of people are probably like you, where they just don't even know what they think, but they've been cornered into picking a side and just sticking with it. And that ends up becoming what they believe for the rest of their lives.
And it's just such a dichotomy because a lot of those people on both sides are the same ones that say freedom, like personal choice. I believe what I want to believe. Yeah. Well, is it what you want to believe, or is it what all these other people want to believe?
Exactly.
I don't know. It always raises those questions for me.
Yeah. Harry Potter's great, dude. People will say they don't like it because it's nerdy or whatever, but
yeah,
it's a great series.
Actually watch it. I mean, I've tried to convince people year after year, watch it, but before you watch it, read it, man. And it's awesome. Changed my life in 8th grade.
Those were like the first like real books I think I ever read that weren't like, you know.
They were mine too, 8th grade.
Yeah.
What year were you? You read it?
God, I have no idea. I mean, I think I probably read the first book 3 or 4 times before I ever read the other ones. Because it was the shortest and like I was just like in over my head trying to read these long books. But I don't know. I probably had them all finished by like 7th or 8th grade.
Yeah.
And then I watched the movies with my dad after that. So that was when I was like, oh shit, these are really good movies. Like I was almost like ashamed that I was going to enjoy them, but they were good.
You had to keep it on the low. You weren't going back to class telling your kids what you were doing.
No one knew. No, I was under my covers at night, like with a flashlight reading them, you know what I'm saying?
See, and here that's different from me because I remember 8th grade. I always had an obsession with being different and just being like going against the grain. So I would post pictures on my Snapchat story of me reading Harry Potter in like an Eno.
Dude, I remember seeing one of those.
I know.
Yeah.
Because like I wanted to be seen as like doing something different. And I think that's always kind of cool, is doing something different. But obviously that was just kind of like a childish way of looking at it. Like, I'm kind of cool. I read Harry Potter. I'm in a fucking Eno.
I mean, but look at like back in the day, you're probably like, oh, I'm going to get made fun of for this. But like now, you know, we're all adults. Like, no one's going to make fun of you for reading a book outside on a nice day. Like, that's a mature-ass thing to do. Like, you're not a loser for that, you know? Maybe 4 years ago, it's just not seen as cool. But
yeah,
I think more people wish they could go and enjoy something like that than just sitting and playing video games all day, you know?
Yeah. Obviously, I think I enjoy it a lot more now. Maybe then it was more of like a showy thing, especially with that sort of mindset. But I did love Harry Potter, and I loved my first read-through in 8th grade, and that's probably, you said Kid Cudi and Mac Miller were your biggest perspective changers. I would say just reading, especially those first few book series and books I read in 8th grade, 7th grade, kind of changed my mind. I had to do the baby steps, which was these Harry Potter books and these other books, and I just like read more and more and realized like, this is awesome. I like learning. Learning's cool. And that kind of translated back to high school as well, because then I enjoyed my classes more and actually took the resources they gave me and implemented them and tried to become the best version of myself I could be and the smartest person I could be.
I mean, that's like the crappy thing about the public school system, is it kind of trains kids to think that learning is lame and it's not fun and you just sit at a desk. And it's because they're forcing these BS topics down your throat that, you know, no 8th grader wants to read To Kill a Mockingbird and analyze every sentence. That's a great book, one of the best books ever written, but like, you're a young kid, you have a hyperactive mind, you're not supposed to just sit down at someone else's pace and hyperanalyze everything. Like, if you gave a kid of that age that book, just told them to read it, they'd probably get a lot more from it because they're working through their own pace, they're learning how they want to. I think that's true in like all areas. Like you said, when you're reading books that you choose and that you enjoy, you're learning something and you're truly benefiting from it.
Yeah.
Versus in school, a lot of kids are just like, oh, I don't want to go to math. I don't want to read this book. And before it even starts, they're just closed off and they're not going to learn any of it effectively.
See, to give some teachers some slack though in that scenario, it's so tough because you have, 20 to 30 kids in a classroom. You only have one teacher. So it's like all these kids think in a different way and learn in a completely different way. So that's kind of why I value maybe the private school system, because it's more of an individualized learning system. And I think kids need an individualized learning system because that's where there's the most growth. And that's why I think junior, senior year, you see the most growth in people getting better grades and actually putting themselves towards their work. Because first of all, they probably want to go to college. That's a big one. But 2, they've just learned how to study. They've learned how to learn from all these years kind of have added up. And that's what it has become, because they know that their teacher isn't going to hold their hand and cater them towards their learning style every step of the way. So they have to do their own shit. If they're a Quizlet learner, they do Quizlet. If they learn best with YouTube videos, they do YouTube videos. And you just kind of find your outlet. And that's definitely what I've seen with a lot of kids that have developed later, maybe with their academics. They've found their flow with their resources.
Yeah. And I think they definitely need to restructure it so that kids know that, like, you don't have to get good grades in high school. You don't have to go to college. You don't even have to graduate high school. Like, there's so many things you can do in your life. And there's a lot of people that, like, from birth, through no fault of their own, are just not wired to sit at a desk for 7 hours a day and learn about economics and math. It's just not who they are. And I think that that's kind of, like, shied away from, especially in Zionsville. Never once was a teacher like, oh, if you failed your math test, maybe it's not your thing. And maybe you'll never use this in your life, and you can go and work construction and be so successful in your own way. So I wish there was more of an emphasis on that. But.
Yeah. And I hate playing devil's advocate, but I have to, because it just adds, it's interesting. But if teachers were to do that, then I don't know if a kid would ever learn, like, how to grit through something, because that's an important ass thing as well. Like, you're going to have to do shit in your life that you don't want to do. And so, like, if a kid just develops that, like, oh, well, I failed my math test, I guess it's just not my thing. What if I do that to every single subject? And then they're just like, well, school's not my thing. Screw this. I like video games, though.
Oh, I mean, that's a good point, dude. I don't know how to rebut that.
Yeah, no, it's just a point. I like where you're coming from, and it all makes sense. And then, like, but then I could see just kids just taking advantage of that, especially maybe their parents taking advantage of that and saying, well, little Timmy just sucks at everything. I'm going to send him to play Roblox as a professional career. And it's like...
No, that's a bad idea. I don't know. I would say that's a good point, because for me personally, like, last year was obviously junior year, like, the biggest slog, at least for me personally.
Yeah, I agree.
Just like hard classes, you need to do well. And I have had zero intrinsic motivation pretty much through all of school. Like, everything is external. It's like, I need to go to college. That's why I need to get good grades. I need my parents to get off my ass. I need to get good grades. It was never once like, I'm super motivated to master this subject and get an A for my own personal benefit. It was always like other things kind of coming in. So I don't know if I didn't have that, if I would have been, you know, as focused as I was, which is interesting to think about. Another trippy thing, we were talking about this.
I was just going to bring it up as well, because I knew it was on the top.
Mystery, Zipf's Law, or whatever it's called.
Zipf's?
Zipf. Zip.
Yeah.
I don't know how you... That was really enunciated.
Zip.
But yeah, basically, throughout all languages, every language, even ancient languages that we haven't even been able to translate yet, a pattern always emerges of, you know, if you rank the most used words in a book or a website or an entire publication of anything, or even just the most used words ever in the language, the second most used word appears half as often as the first, and the third 1/3 as often as the first, and so on. So it's basically just proportional to the rank, or 1 over its rank, right? So the 55th word will show up 1/55th as often as the most used word. And it's kind of weird to think about that, but it's true everywhere. In movies, if you rank all the words, the word that shows up the most will be double as much as the word that shows up the second most. I don't know if this is making sense.
No, yeah, it makes sense. It's just, it blows my mind. Yeah. I don't get how, like, a pattern like that could emerge, and it just seems like it makes me realize, are our languages so easy to understand and to kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Simplify. We can just simplify our languages down to this simple pattern. It makes me think of, like, maybe some alien civilizations are out there and they're looking at us like their languages are the most basic thing ever. They speak all these words and all these different languages, but these alien creatures can just understand them in 2 seconds because of things like this Zipf's law that, like, we are just kind of beginning to understand, and no one understands why it occurs.
Yeah, there's no real explanation, and it's kind of disturbing to think about how predictable as humans we are, because everything feels so random, and, you know, every part of your life feels controlled by yourself. You have, you know, if you want to throw a brick through someone's window, you can go do that just based on your own free will.
Yeah.
But patterns like this emerge, And this curve, you can see it everywhere. It's not just language. It's, the rate at which we forget things and solar flare emissions and all these crazy, different aspects of life that have nothing to do with language follow the same law and show the same curve. So, you have to imagine, it goes back to how complex reality is, and we use this simple language to convey that. But if you think about it, everything that we say comes from life and what we're experiencing and seeing in the moment. So does that just mean that the course of our history is just predictable and obvious, and we're just simpletons that follow a normal ass pattern that we can't even see or understand for ourselves?
That's the same exact question I ask, and it's a scary question. That's why my mind immediately goes to when you bring up this law of we cannot be the most complex creatures out there. But maybe then it raises the question, if let's say that hypothetically there are a bunch of alien civilizations out there, is this just a law of the universe? And once language gets developed, and once different patterns, like you said, the solar flares, other things that occur naturally within our universe, is it just bound to happen? Kind of like our physics laws. It's just universal across the universe, and they don't change because they're constants. Is that the same thing with when life begins to form? It's just there's constants, and we cannot get away from that no matter how hard we try. It raises that question, and it's not a scary thought, but it's a cool thought. Yeah. And I like thinking about it.
But it definitely is a little troubling that things might not be as random as we think. And when it comes down to it, you can look at every word that's used on Wikipedia, or just take one book off of the shelf, and they almost exactly, without any, exceptions really, follow this specific curve. It's strange. And you can think too, 50% or 45 to 50% of the words used in almost every book appear once. 50% of the words used in Alice in Wonderland, big old book, only appear one time. And the other half, you have to imagine how many words, the word the, that's probably 10% of the whole book. Some crazy huge number. And meanwhile, they've got hundreds of words that only appeared once in any context. And have you heard of this 20%, 80% phenomenon?
I can't remember the guy's name that kind of invented this, but yeah, I know what it is. It's you get out the 20, what is it?
It's another thing that kind of just applies to everything. But if you hear it in the business world, 80% of your business comes from 20% of your customers. 80% of your complaints come from 20% of your customers. The dude that discovered it was growing peas in his garden, pea pods. And 80% of the peas came from 20% of his pea plants. And the more he kind of looked into this 80-20 rule applies universally in many circumstances. Everywhere. In all walks of life. Which is really strange.
Oh my God.
Farming, agriculture, stuff like that, politics, language, religion, everywhere you can find this 20%, 80% split. And obviously it's not always exactly 20 and 80%, but, something 20% of the top used words in the language make up 80-something% of the language.
Oh my God. It actually blows my mind. And these constants just seem to be everywhere, and we can't get away from them. Especially my mind kind of begins to numb when I think about number systems. And number systems have to be universal, correct?
Yeah.
I don't know how you can change them.
In this universe, at least, yeah.
1's a 1, 2's a 2. Our shapes, it's a three-dimensional world, so we only have so many things we can make, and I don't know. It just freaks me out. That's why.
Think about pi. Did we create pi, or did pi already exist and we just discovered this never-ending decimal, on our own? We didn't just come up with this number. This universally applies to the radius of a circle, define the circumference or whatever pi would be used for. It already existed.
Yeah.
You can break everything down to mathematics in life, which is another thing that's just kind of troubling. Everything is so explainable mathematically that almost nothing has true randomness, it feels like.
See, that's a scary thought, because then it goes to your brain and how your neurons fire. And it's I know we've talked about this, that not at your house, yeah. But it's if in quantum physics, if we could just predict where every single neuron's going to go, do we really have free will because we can predict our every movement and action beforehand just using science and mathematics?
Yeah.
Like
that's like the question of life, right? Do we have free will, or is everything just written as it is, and we're just, fooled in our own way, going about thinking that we're making our own decisions when really our brain has already set what it's going to think and do,
Yeah, I normally don't voice my opinions on these. Like when we get on these topics, I'll just kind of leave it at that. Now I would have moved on the conversation. Mm-hmm. But I'm going to add my opinion on this one. I think consciousness, self-consciousness, consciousness that we have developed, humans have developed, is an anomaly. And there has to be some sort of free will, that our consciousness cannot just be broken down to mathematics. I don't have any scientific basis for that. I don't think I have to believe it, but I want to believe it, and I feel like I sort of have to believe it, just because it gives me a sense of security and a sense of I get to write my own path.
Yeah.
and that's just how I believe it right now. And until I'm, scientifically disproved, if it ever is, probably not, maybe not, because this is such a wonder consciousness. But that's what I'm going to believe until then.
See, I don't know. I wouldn't want to live if I didn't believe that, Like, what's the point of going about your daily life if everything's just determined already and you have no say in it?
And that's the thing. Like, if I just suddenly believed that life is deterministic and everything could be, that my life is just, like, already set in stone, that'd make me just sit on my ass.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and then to that point, knowing that information, would that change the course of your life?
Oh, totally. It had to. It would have to.
If knowing that information changes the course of your life, then it wasn't already predetermined and you did have free will.
If I studied philosophy, I think just constantly being involved in these sorts of conversations would maybe be a bit too much. And I don't know if my psyche could handle it. I need times where I'm just learning about business and business ethics or accounting, just crunching numbers. I don't need to be constantly having these conversations, constantly learning all there is to know about different philosophy type stuff. But I do have an interest in it, and I do want to stay into it, and I do want to be able to have these talks, coming into the conversations with a bit more knowledge, and I can share more deep thoughts. But doing that every single day, I don't think it's for me either.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's definitely good to just stay mindful of these topics, and I do think there's a lot that you can apply to your everyday life, but just constantly questioning your own existence and the others around you, I don't know if that's a pleasant way to live. Like, sometimes you gotta watch videos of some guy hitting a moose with his car or getting hit in the nuts with a bike. It's just the simpler pleasures of life. You can't sacrifice that for serious, constant agony over questioning yourself and what life is and what it all means.
That raises the question for me, is ignorance bliss? Because,
I think absolutely.
And then on the flip side of that, if ignorance is truly bliss, who would ever drive society? Because we need the people like your brother that constantly put themselves in these situations where it's tough and it's hard on your mind, because they're trying to achieve something and they're trying to answer the questions, and it takes a toll on your mind. But I think for humanity to advance, there must be at least a few of those people that are born every single year. And it's a deep thought, but it's just one that I believe that we must have. All right. Me and Duncan just took off the headsets. The clock ticked an hour and 16 minutes. And it was just one of those times where we were so locked into the conversation where...
It just flew by, dude. I thought it had been maybe 25 minutes, like maximum.
It's what happens to every person that comes on here. We do that first time, we take off the headsets, and it's like, what the hell? It feels like you just entered a whole different place when you're not in this, like, locked in conversation.
I was in Narnia, dude. I was off in space. It was crazy.
So we're going to wrap this up here, but before that, I wanted to ask you movie, book, TV suggestions. I always like to end with this.
One book suggestion is Perfume by Patrick Süskind.
Perfume. Okay.
It's the weirdest book I've ever read. It's not very long, which I like because I have trouble finishing like longer books and whatnot. Yeah. So it's a short read. It's like a fiction, but it's basically about this baby that's born, and he's grotesque and ugly and just kind of the classic, like, no one wants to be near this baby. Like Shrek, except it's a human. It's like a just gross ogre, but it's still a human.
Yeah.
And he becomes a perfume apprentice because he's got this like insane sense of smell. And he can tell these notes differently. He can smell things from miles away. And it's just this like really weird, kind of disturbing description of this baby and how he grows up and becomes his own perfumer. I don't know what you call it, but fragrance maker. And he's got a bloodlust. He thinks the smell of like human blood is a delicacy. And he becomes this like murderer. And it's just him on his own. He's got no friends, no family. And it's so like some of the descriptions are like really brutal and grotesque.
Haunting.
Yeah, but it's just like you can't look away. It's like a train crash video. Like it's like, oh my God, but you gotta keep watching. So that was one book that I read that was just like, what the hell?
You said Perfume by
Patrick Süskind.
This sounds awesome.
It was crazy. It was mentioned, I was watching a Kurt Cobain interview from the 90s, you know him from Nirvana?
Yep.
And he cited it as like his favorite book. And it's basically this like weird tale of this like murderer, I don't know, just like an outcast of society in the most extreme way possible. And it's just, it's unique. I've never read another book, anything like it. I can't say that you'll love it, but you'll definitely, you know, it's unique for sure.
I'm picking this up, like 100%. This sounds sick.
It's interesting.
Dang.
Yeah, it's crazy. I haven't thought about that book in a while. I don't know why.
So you read it it was a while ago.
I probably read this like a year ago. I got a Kindle and I was like, I have to start reading more since I have a fucking Kindle.
So you pick up this book out of all books.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, because I was watching that interview and I was just like, oh wow,
yeah.
this has to be so profound or popular or whatever, but it's just this weird book.
Got it. All right. Well, Perfume and what's the Epictetus book?
It's called Discourses and Selected Writings.
Discourses and Selective Writings. Okay. I don't know if I have any new suggestions this week. I picked up the second book of this series called The Stormlight Archive. This book that I sitting right here, the first one of this series, favorite book I've ever read.
Really?
The characters and their storylines, it's just the most impactful book I've read because of how well written the characters are. And they just connect with me so well. And I cannot suggest a book enough, especially a fantasy book. I'm not even a big fantasy reader, but the characters are just so well formed that I haven't read anything like this, and the world is just so complex and awesome. So if you even have like a remote interest in Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, Dune, read this, no doubt. Well, I love the suggestions. We'll cut it here. We talked on a lot of different things, like we kind of always do. Jumped around, talked about Elon Musk.
Yeah, we had to.
He seems to be a popular guy to talk about right now on the internet.
Yeah, I mean, that's just something crazy. Will Smith, we didn't bring up Will Smith.
Yeah, didn't talk about that. maybe on our second pod, man, because you're for sure gonna be back.
Oh hell yeah! Thanks for having me, dude.
No problem. Yeah. So I'm Ethan Woodworth, my buddy Duncan Michie. This is episode 16. We'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.